gentlemen, welcome to another EMA Simple live stream, and it is a very exciting one today, as we're going to be talking about the largest topics with a very interesting guest. But first, I want to make sure that everyone can hear and see me without any issues, so we don't run into problems later. If we could get just a confirmation in our live chat, that would be grand. Audio and camera doing good. That's always good to hear. Before we start, I have 3 quick announcements. The eagle-eyed among you might have already seen that we are going to the European Parliament in Strasbourg next week, so be sure to keep your eyes open on that. And one more thing, we also have, you see this camera, it's let's say of questionable quality, but that's going to be fixed very soon. I want to say this is the last stream with this weird old camera, so that's good. And then finally, make sure to follow us on all of our socials if you haven't already. I can neither hear nor see you, Elliot, but I may have drunk a little too much on such a fine Wednesday. Okay, well, other people are saying they can hear me anyways. Right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to introduce the guest of tonight. Lukas Mandl is a MEP from the ÖVP in Austria, which is in the EPP for those that don't know, and also, very interesting, the president of the Spinelli Group. But my guest can introduce himself way better than I can. So, Mr. Mandl, welcome to the show.
Thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me.
So, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? What is it that you do? What issues are the most important to you?
Well, I have been here in the European Parliament as a member from Austria, as you already said, since 2017. That means I'm the longest standing member of the European Parliament in the EPP group from my country, which is at the same time my constituency. Austria is in its entirety one constituency. And I try to contribute to a Europe with more strength to the outside and more freedom to the inside. So this is the overall claim for my staff and me. And this is the direction we go when it comes to our parliamentary contribution to the fate of our continent.
All right. And that more unified approach towards the outside, I guess, manifests itself in the presidency of the Spinelli Group. Could you talk a little bit more about what the Spinelli Group is and why you are engaged with this group?
The Spinelli Group is a group of parliamentarians who want to contribute to a more federal Europe. It's also connected to the Union of European Federalists, a civil society-based UEF is a French abbreviation. Spinelli Group is very old already, has been in place for many decades in the European Parliament. It's also an honor to have the opportunity to chair the Spinelli Group as a president for 9 months. So it's a rotation principle, which I'm only, let's say, about to start with the first 9 months. After me, colleagues from different other political groups will have this seat, this chairwomanship actually, and this is also part of the strength of Spinelli Group, that we are working cross-border, cross countries, borders, and especially cross borders of political affiliations, political groups, political parties, for the sake of EU reform, because this is what the meaning in today's political life of working for a more federalist Europe is, that we want EU reform. EU reform means a new EU treaty, as it was in the past. We have already the year 2024, even nearly already 2025. That's not a new information, but it might be new for the one or the other participant today, that we have the longest period of time already passed without a new EU treaty. We also have the longest period of time already passed without an accession. But we had Brexit during this period of time. So there are many good reasons, also given the circumstances geopolitically, there are many good reasons for encouraging and empowering whom? The member states' governments to be brave enough for a new EU treaty, to show leadership in that regard, responsibility. Responsibility includes the expression of to respond, the response to the people's demand of EU reform, and this is what we work together for as a Spinelli Group in the European Parliament.
Very clear. And like you said, it's more of almost a -1 instead of any accession during that time. So that is regrettable, especially for those that would like to see a stronger Europe. I want to move to our first in-depth topic, which is, of course, the US, as we have just had the elections in the US. And I was curious, just to start off the conversation, what is your first impressions on a Trump presidency for the EU as a larger project, and specifically also for the idea of that federalism, of that more integration?
Unpredictability. That's my first impression. That's my first thought. That's my first term expression I would associate with this election. But I do not have any fear, frankly. I mean, most important is that we know, understand, and emphasize the fact that we are Europeans. We're not Americans. We're not, let's say, we didn't have a duty to vote there. It's not our president, even while we are, of course, very affected, as the whole world is, and especially we are very affected by who runs the administration of the United States. This will be, as of January, Donald Trump. Fair enough, we have to deal with it. Dealing with it means, first of all, transatlantic partnership will remain to be essential, in the very literally meaning of essential for our security and for our economy. So the question must never be whether or not there is a transatlantic partnership. The question can only be how we will conduct this transatlantic partnership in the future, in particular in this coming up next 4 years with Donald Trump again in place as the president of the United States. Secondly, it will be a tough time. Donald Trump sees himself as a deal maker. I guess we are good in that. I mean, we are based on cooperation. That's maybe not the first approach of Donald Trump to things, but we conduct negotiations all the time. We make compromises all the time. Compromise is also called the language of democracy. And compromise is also what made Europe strong. I would even dare to say made Europe great, because Europe is great already and will remain great. And that means we know how to negotiate, we know how to make deals, and the Trump administration will recognize that we will be trustworthy partners and being able to make deals. And if we will be approached toughly, we will also be able to behave tough, but we remain in this partnership because it's truly a partnership. It's not any cooperation on the planet. It's a partnership of the parts of the world who really contribute to the values Europe stands for, like human dignity, like individual freedom, and others. And this is at stake. I mean, this is not the funny part, that these values have been attacked now for many years by systemic rivals, as they are called in the bureaucratic EU language. And this is why this partnership is essential for ourselves, but also for the further development of humanity.
Sure. And is how exactly, you already asked the question, not whether if that transatlantic relationship should be there, but how that transatlantic relationship should look like. So specifically, how should that relationship look like? And by all of the elements, it is very, very clear that it is an important relationship between the EU and the US, especially when things like authoritarianism are on the rise, and our values, you could say, as Europeans are being challenged worldwide. How should that transatlantic relationship look like? And do you see any futures with maybe not from our side, but from the US side of that relationship falling away?
First, I very much believe in parliamentarism, meaning also parliamentary diplomacy, meaning also parliamentary ties, especially between the US and the European Union, meaning that especially now, after the US election and as of January, the outreach, I would, let's say, rather say the mutual outreach, but at least the outreach we can control, the outreach from the European side to the colleagues on Capitol Hill, in Washington, D.C., in the Congress and the Senate will be more important than ever. First, parliamentary diplomacy, parliamentary cooperation, parliamentary exchange day by day. We did that in the past. There were times we did more of it. There were times we did less of it. We have to do more than ever. First. Secondly, if the Trump administration would even think about trade barriers, I would not talk about a trade war. This is already escalation in language. I do not want to do that. But if the Trump administration would consider something like that, we will consider the same.
Okay.
As Jean-Claude Juncker, as a Commission's president, did during the first Trump administration, and I highly admire. I don't know how he did it because it was a talk behind closed doors. I would like to have been a fly on the wall in Oval Office that time, but Jean-Claude Juncker actually, as a Commission's president, avoided trade war between these strong and important, these strong partners with an important partnership, the US and EU. When security, so economy is important, security is important as well. When security will be made an issue from the US side, I guess we have to strengthen ourselves, continue to do so. I would say the serious part of this endeavor began with Putin-Russia's war of aggression with military means against Ukraine and hybrid means against all of us, as we also should emphasize. So we must help ourselves in Europe, and we have also to convey to the US side, of course, when we work on our capability to defend ourselves, it will always be complementary to NATO and not beside NATO, not in parallel, and of course, by far not against NATO. Of course, we know European Union, more or less in its entirety, is part of NATO. NATO is nothing else but a security umbrella, an insurance, if you want to. That's also the way I try to convey the message to constituents that I mean, we need insurances for many things. I mean, I hope your camera you were talking before in the beginning is insuranced very well. But I mean, I like the camera picture, but maybe the next camera will provide an even better picture. We have insurances. We have insurances in place all the time in our daily life, business life, private life. Of course, we need also an insurance against military risks, isn't it? So NATO is our security umbrella, our insurance also as EU, and EU will contribute ever more until or as long as it's necessary to NATO. And this is also a message, let's say, Trump administration should not only receive but embrace. And with these two pillars, economy and security, and with the precondition of parliamentary exchange, a lot will already be done for a good ground, for a good relationship also during the Trump administration ahead.
Okay, that's clear. And I would like to talk a little bit more about that security pillar. But before that, I would like to address the audience by saying, everyone that's watching, feel free to leave your questions in the chat. If we can, I will try and ask them. The more on topic, the better. But let's move back to that security pillar, because the first thing many thought of when Trump became president was, is that support for Ukraine going to be lasting? And will the EU have to step up, so to say, spend more, take more of a leading role in providing this aid to Ukraine? What are your thoughts on that?
Maybe two things as to say before. First, I do not want to be naive. I try to remain realistic. Secondly, I tend to see the glass half full. That means support for Ukraine, meaning for our freedom, liberty, our civilization actually against this existential threat, because Putin-Russia's war is nothing but an existential threat, will remain.
Yep.
Secondly, I have to say I was a teenager when European leaders were emphasizing it will not happen again as it happened in the Balkan wars, that we will need US support in order to sort things out and to calm things down and to find solution on European soil. And around 30 years later, we have a very similar situation. We obviously are in need of US help to sort things out on European soil. So this is the strongest reason for us to help ourselves, as I have said before. At the same time, maybe that's the fourth pillar also when it comes to our outreach to the Trump administration. I had talks about that already today in the European Parliament in order not to talk only about parliamentary diplomacy, but to do it. I have to say, maybe that's the fourth pillar, that we have to connect the dots. And the dots reach from Pyongyang to Tehran to Moscow, to terrorist organizations of various kinds, even to Boko Haram on the African continent. So there are ideologies of hatred and destruction against our civilization and its very values. And they are connected. So we all know, at least in his first administration, Trump was very keen to sort things out in the framework of our civilization of values in the Middle East. And what's today more revealed than ever is that there are connections in daily warfare in place between Tehran and Moscow, even supported by Pyongyang. And Tehran is the same source that's funding terrorism, not only in the Middle East, but also in Europe and in other parts of the world, strongly connected to terrorists also on the African continent, also when it comes to funding. So also the Trump administration will know things are connected. And if you let Putin win in Ukraine, you will at the same time also support Tehran. And if you let terrorism prevail anywhere, you will the other way around also support Putin, Russia. Do we want that to happen? I guess we do not want that to happen. We are in this together. And this is why there are reasons why I see the glass half full when it comes to US cooperation for our security.
All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I would also agree. I don't think we would want that to happen. Moving on then. When we're talking about all of these things, you've already mentioned quite a few solutions. I would like to focus on the EU as a whole. When all of these things are connected, when there's this threat on our doorstep, what is the answer? And I'm trying to hint a little bit here at the Spinelli Group and the topic of federation, as it has been a big topic on our YouTube channel as well for the past few days. So how could integrating European member states help or assist in these large security or other policy areas?
In the first place, it's also about taxpayers' money invested in security. I mean, when I talk about increasing our investment in security, that doesn't necessarily mean in each and every case to spend more money in terms of numbers. It also means to cooperate more. To cooperate more when it comes to systems, when it comes to exercises, when it comes to cooperation. And this is what PESCO, for example, the so-called permanent structured cooperation of member states' armed forces, is about. This is what our new, very first in history, defense commissioner of the European Commission, we will most probably elect in the European Parliament finally next week in the plenary session in Strasbourg. What this very first defense commissioner will be in the first place responsible for to make these connections happen. So this is one of the reasons why for our security integration is important. Also, when it comes to hybrid threats, we have to face that the military warfare in a conventional way is today not only anymore the only way of warfare, but there are hybrid threats around, there are even economic threats around, and there is one attempt. And maybe if one would have only one example in mind for what would be done to weaken Europe and to weaken our civilization, then it would be division, to cause division. To cause division is what Putin, Russia wants with violent, bloody means. To cause division is what terrorists want. Frankly, to cause division is also what parts of the world want to try to cooperate with each member state, specifically individually, and not and dare or tend not to talk to the EU in its entirety, but rather to have different economic outreaches to different member states. So unity also means here, if you want to speak to Europe, you really have to speak to Europe, not to the one or the other member state for the sake of our own interests. While I'm happy to be Austrian, I will always remain Austrian. I'm an Austrian patriot as well as I'm a European patriot. That's no contradiction. But I know the best thing for Austria that can happen is that we are part of a family which is so strong that each and every power on earth has to take into account the position of this European integrated family, and we will be a strong body to talk to. And this is also true for large powers like China and others.
You make an interesting point of unity, and the topic that really fascinates me is that definitely not everyone sees it this way. I believe you can agree with me on that. That closer EU integration is still a topic that many don't agree or don't see the vision of, or yet, or not at all. I'm curious what you would say to, let's say, convince the average person in the benefits of this closer integration, is closer cooperation. And what you just gave was a very technical answer, so I'm going to try and challenge you to give it easy as possible answer as you can.
You refer to our own responsibility in this whole endeavor. And here I'm very critical on bureaucracy, over bureaucracy, and things alike. I want to quote Montesquieu. I hope it's simple enough. Montesquieu said, I really hope so. It's not ironically meant. Yep. Montesquieu said, if it's not necessary to make a law, what would then be necessary? Montesquieu said, when it's not necessary to make a law, it is necessary to not make a law, meaning to avoid a regulation, to avoid an extra regulation. And sometimes in this parliamentary procedure, in this parliamentary endeavor, not only in European Parliament, in each parliament on earth, it's even more difficult. It needs even more efforts to avoid making a law than to actually make a law. So we have to reduce bureaucracy. We have to reduce regulation. We have to reduce bureaucratic burden for companies, for small and middle-sized enterprises, for each and everybody. I mean, we are talking today about the big threats for our security. We are talking about the big opportunities also for economy when it comes to US connection and connections all over the world. Today in this channel, half an hour ago, before we started our talk today, I have received an email message from a mayor in my home country, in Austria, in my constituency. The mayor is also a friend. And he confronted me not with security issues or global economy issues. He confronted me with some new EU regulation I wasn't even aware of yet about wires. I mean, let's see. I will have a deeper look into that. And he's concerned. He's concerned. He's even more than concerned. He's critical. And people tend also to become cynical when it comes to regulation. They don't want to have in place, and if they want to have them in place or they could accept them, then they want to have them on regional level or local level, but not centralistically decided on from EU level. And this is our part in it. I have to say that if we will not, we will even cause division within EU and play the game of those who want to weaken Europe. If we confront people with too much bureaucratic burden. There's really a lot at stake.
All right. So only make laws when they're necessary and at the level that they're required to be. I mean, I believe that's quite a clear message. I want to turn to our live chat for a minute because we have a viewer. User Villa asks, and it's a bit off the topic, so I hope you're okay with that. Since Mandl is also an EPP MEP, I want to ask his opinion on EPP's stance on EU integration. EPP is the largest EU group, but only makes up 15% of the Spinelli Group, while S&D makes up almost 48% of it. So, what is the EPP stance on the Spinelli Group and deeper EU integration?
Well, EPP is not only the largest group, it's of course due to that also the most diverse group. So you will of course find, or I will find, maybe one EPP colleague who would not join me when I say the one or the other opinion, but generally, I mean, I'm happy to be part of EPP. EPP is the Christian Democratic Group. European integration is in its entirety a Christian Democratic vision from 80 years before. Klaus Welle, the long-term Secretary General of the European Parliament, who had his roots also in Christian democracy, once said, Christian democracy only had 3 ideas in 80 years of existence. First, EU integration. Second, transatlantic partnership. Third, eco-social market economy. So this is, of course, a bit ironic because it's more than 3 ideas, but it's 3 big pillars, 3 big visions. And of course, EPP is not the only driving force. I would never say that. I have here social democratic colleagues, liberal colleagues, and others whom I highly, highly appreciate in their parliamentary endeavor and their contribution to EU reform. But I guess EU, I want to say EPP, actually is right in seeing itself in the very core of EU reform, and this is also true for the values and the vision of the Spinelli Group.
Okay, wonderful. Since we are nearing the end of our conversation, I wanted to ask you a question about what other major issues do you see? I feel like maybe myself or other people, the media, might be very captured on certain specific topics or issues that are being framed as very important, and they might very well be. But I'm curious, is there anything that you want to bring attention to that you've not been seeing enough in the media or anywhere, or just being talked about in general?
Maybe 2 things which spontaneously come on my mind. The one is messenger services. Why do I say that? Sometimes, let's say, regular political op-eds, media, journalists, as well as politicians from centered political groups, no matter on what level, sometimes they are still surprised about the one or the other election result, because it seemed to be differently before the election day, and then there is a result which tends to more populism than expected. I want to draw the attention on the fact that what's happening in some messenger services channels is by nature not to be seen from outside. It's by nature not public, but it affects hundreds of thousands of people and Europe-wide millions of people. So populistic, extremist, harmful political powers, maybe ones who would be sponsored from outside the EU in order to divide us, and we talked about division today, might use these shadows of non-public communication in messenger channels in order to cause distraction and to cause this kind of division. We should be aware of that. I'm sure most of the viewers today and the viewers generally of EU Made Simple, of this beautiful channel, will be, let's say, interested in a positive, united future with freedom and dignity. We should be aware of that, and we should do our best in order to make the physical encounter, the personal encounter, the face-to-face talk to as much people as we can, and also to react to positions and opinions we might not share at all. But even then, it will be more important to react in the framework of a broader, diverse, positive, and liberty-based society. Secondly, very different topic, but since you said, what do you think it's not covered enough in the media? It's the Sahel region. It's Sub-Sahara Africa. Because it's clear the crisis that affects us most, because it's existential. It's an existential threat, as said before, is Putin-Russia's war. The crisis that also affects us a lot, because nothing that happens in the Middle East is contained in the Middle East. It's very relevant for our daily life, is the terrorist war against Israel and the defense of Israel for its very existence and for its people. But one crisis we are not too aware of is the one in the Sahel region in Sub-Saharan Africa, which is a severe crisis until up to nutrition issues, which are extremely harmful for people, causing not only migration but also conflict, also violence, and this is also something we will be affected of. So, for the sake of human dignity, we have to help, but also for the sake of our own interest, we have to be aware and we have to help also there.
Yep, no, absolutely. I believe the Sahel region could deserve its own entire video, live stream, everything, because it's such a complicated topic. But as we're at the end of our time, I wanted to give you one last opportunity to give a final message or a final idea to the viewers before you head off. So any shout outs even that you would like to do, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you for this one last chance, as you just call it. I like it very much. And I dare to say parliamentarism is always part of the solution. That's what I want to share. Parliamentarism is part of the solution. Parliamentarism is one of the biggest innovations of mankind. I mean, you would think electricity would be a big innovation, or printing books would be a big innovation, which is all true. But also parliamentarism is a big innovation because it means people are represented and not only affected, but also represented, and decisions would be taken not with violence, not at all, but with talking to each other and with deciding democratically, and with the chance for everybody to newly elect every few years. And this is why I advocate for parliamentarism as a big innovation and as an idea which will contribute to solutions also in the future.
I believe that's a wonderful message. What at least I personally can totally stand behind. Lukas Mandl, thank you very much for joining us tonight. The audience, thank you very much for joining as well. And we will see each other, or not us, but me and the audience will see each other again in Strasbourg. And if that's all, then have a lovely evening, everyone. Everyone's saying great guests as well, by the way. So they definitely enjoyed your time here. All right, bye-bye.